Hello, this is Dave Frank, host of You Are Here. The following is a rebroadcast of an episode of You Are Here that first aired in August of 2019. During this interview, I had the pleasure of speaking with Susan Seaman, Mayor of Eureka, and Karen Dominguez, Auditor-Controller of Humboldt County, about their experiences in the local political arena and the prospects for electing a woman president in the 2020 presidential election. Enjoy.
History, it keeps repeating what we got wrong. Religious wars, settling old scores, ancient grudges we should have forgot. We all believe in our democracy, but the elections are fought by the rich. The establishment favors the 1%. It's a fix that we just can't quit. How long will it take us to finally make something new? When will we wake up and finally stop getting screwed? It's a prophecy, not democracy, and we're all being used. How long will it take us to make something new? We have ideals, but when your government steals, corruption wins out every time. Racist bigotry and forms of policy get the middle class to toe the line. It's time to make a democratic state and give everyone an equal chance. Put an end to war and don't just bomb the poor. It's the only chance we really have. How long will it take us to finally make something new? When will we wake up and finally stop getting screwed? It's a prophecy, not democracy, and we're all being used. How long will it take us to make something new?
Hello, and welcome to You Are Here, where we carry the discourse forward towards a deeper, more nuanced understanding of where we are, where we want to be, and how we get there. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and today I'm joined in the studio by Jasmine Manuel, a human resources professional at a local nonprofit and a member of the City of Eureka Personnel Board. Hey, Jasmine, thanks for joining us here today.
Hello, David. Thank you for having me.
Today, Jasmine and I are going to be speaking with Susan Seaman, who is the mayor of Eureka, and Karen Dominguez, who is Auditor-Controller of Humboldt County, about their experiences in the local political arena and the prospects for electing a woman president in the upcoming presidential election. So there's a lot here. I'm really looking forward to speaking with them, and hopefully you guys you're in for a treat here. So we're going to start by taking a look at a recent article from the website 538 titled, "Americans Say They Would Vote for a Woman, but ... and also explore some of the research results and public opinion data behind that article's conclusions. So hopefully we'll shed some light on perceptions about women in politics and perceptions from women who have successfully navigated the political process. So when this article when I first saw it, when it first came out, I realized that this was something that in the back of my mind, I wondered, is America really ready? I think America's ready, but what does this data show? And so the article itself has links, I would think 20 links or something to all these different studies. And I went through them and found a few. So just a little general caveat here is that no one poll and no one research study and all these things stand on their own, and you don't overweight the value of any one of them. But sort of as a mosaic, they definitely paint a picture. And so I think I just been told that Susan and Karen are on the line. Are you guys on there?
Hello, I'm here. This is Susan.
Hello, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, this is Karen.
Karen, right on, guys. Thank
Hi,
you so
Karen.
much. This is fantastic. So I think you guys heard. I think you guys got on the line. And basically, to begin with, this article, it frames the issue saying, well, what is the conventional wisdom? Why is it the case that people would even need this but ... in there when we consider who might be the next president of the United States? But I found that when you dug into the research and you dug into some of these links that it shared with you, it was really more about women, successful women in the political arena, doing a great job of getting elected. If women run, they get elected. And also that a vast majority of the people say 90+% of the people express a willingness to vote for women. and a tiny percent, like less than 20%, like 14% or something, say they have no reservations at all about the excellent job that women do in politics. So just at a big picture, big frame issue, it's the case that like we all already kind of agree that there's not an issue here, but yet there's this underlying but. So it's not that common, it's not that conventional wisdom that what is the but. So before we start to speak with you guys about your experiences, your personal experiences, I'm going to mention I did a little digging, and so the countries that have had a woman leader before the United States, there was a CNN article published in January. It says 59 other countries beat America to that milestone. But when you look at Wikipedia, it's a broader set of categories. And ultimately, like there are 27 countries right now that have elected head of state or government. There are 74 countries that have previously had a woman elected as head of state or government. And so if you add those two together and you know the ones that are in the past and the ones that are present, it comes to 85. So that's like close to half of all the countries. And that's just in the modern era. And if you look back to the days of the monarchs and all the continents, most of the regions, almost everywhere on earth has had women leaders pretty much forever. So, I mean, not consistently, but in periods throughout their history. So this circle is like, well, if everybody's always been cool with it and everybody in America is always cool with it, where is the but? Like, where does the but come from? So what it is so I looked at this real quick, guys, this Ipsos Daily Beast poll. And what it said was that the real issue is that people aren't sure if their neighbors are comfortable. And so like 30+% say that they're not sure about their neighbor. 28% say they don't know about their neighbor. So that's like that ends up being like close to 50 plus 60% of the people that project like, I don't really trust my neighbor's judgment about women in politics. I'm not really sure about this. And so you guys, Karen and Susan, you guys are living examples of people who have navigated the system and successfully won elected office. And so what I was hoping to do is speak with you a little bit about your experiences. So I would say, like, for example, to start, just big picture, a little bit bigger, a little smaller than before, but still big. There was a Gallup poll that said like 90+% of people would be willing to elect people who were Black and Hispanic and also women. So it's like 90+%. And then as you go down the list of things that are a little bit less popular, people start to get down into the into the 70s when they say or 80s evangelical Christian or someone under 40. And then it drops a little bit more, 66 if it's the person's a Muslim. It goes a little bit lower if they're over 70, right? So that's like in the 60s, low 60s. And then atheist is 60. And then at the very bottom is socialist, like 47. So when we say, I wonder if anybody is willing to elect, a woman president, it's everybody is willing. And then so I think what the takeaway here is that there's not an inherent bias. It's different. It really what it comes down to is stereotypes. It's the candidacy, women candidates. And again, this is based on the data that we have in front of us if we want to talk about it. It's the traits that people most associate with politicians. These stereotypes: competence, ambition, aggressiveness, confidence, toughness. Those have been linked to masculine behavior. Typically, that's what people, there's studies out there that say that's typically what people think of women. And so the qualifications, the likability, these are challenges like that people face. And then also, so because of these biases, whether they're helpful or not, it narrows the possibilities for how viable maybe a female candidate can be. So, or at least feel, or maybe how they behave. So I guess first start with Susan. Have you, if you don't mind, like your experience when you were running for office, did you have to face some of this tightrope walking between what would be a stereotypically masculine role when you were addressing policy preferences or policy priorities that were important to you and your community?
So I I had an interesting situation. I was running in a campaign with 3 women. So I wasn't running against any men.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And my background is in economic development, so I tended to, I think, talk about things that maybe were less on the side that you would hear women traditionally talk. I mean, if you're talking about in these stereotypes.
Yeah.
However, now that I'm elected, and it's not like I've changed since I ran, my biggest policy is child care. Now that I'm talking a lot about child care, I'm finding that while people consider that sort of a women's issue, men are very concerned about it. And if you ask them one-on-one, it affects them a whole lot directly. So I've kind of gone in and out of, how to talk about issues. Maybe I talk about child care with a little bit more of an economic development bent because that's my background, but not necessarily because that's my sex.
Yeah, understood. Totally.
Yeah.
What about you, Karen? Is there any observations that you have about your experience, whether it was when you were trying to decide to run for office or during the actual process of running?
Well, after hearing everything you said, I keep thinking about how does it apply to me? Which of the boxes can I check? And when you said aggressive, direct, I could check all of those. What was interesting about my campaign is I was running against an older white man who had already been working at the county for a long time. And I am, a woman of color, an immigrant, bilingual, and I don't tower over people. I'm only 5 feet. So it's almost funny to look at me sometimes, and I can admit that. What I've noticed more now that I'm in the position, nothing's changed about me. I'm still very direct. I'm still very upfront. I'm still very communicative, is I'm not being treated any differently than I was when I wasn't the auditor controller. No, there hasn't been a big shift that, now you're in a position of control. Now I can listen to you. They just always listened to me. And it had to do with my confidence, because when I speak, I better know what I'm talking about. And there was that confidence that makes people feel like I know what I'm doing, so they feel like they want to listen. That's with people I work for. An example I want to use and how I may be still treated differently by people who don't work with me on a regular basis or who don't know my personal background is I purchased a desk. In my office, we didn't have real desks. We had pieces of wood stapled together pretty much. And the first thing I did was get a desk where I wouldn't be hurting my back to sit at. The guy who came to measure it and build it for me said, okay, here's the desk you're going to get. And I said, great, send it to me. When it was sent, it came with a modesty panel. I didn't know what a modesty panel was. I just saw a curtain thing in a bag, and I said, what is this? Oh, they sent it by mistake. Turns out he felt that it was okay to just go ahead and order it for me. And I had to Google modesty panel. What is that? It's for when we wear dresses. This man had no idea. I never wear dresses. I never wear heels. But it was that assumption. And the assumption ended up with a cost because I ended up paying for a modesty panel that I didn't order. That's about the only thing that I can vividly remember in the last 6 months that someone made a decision for me without consulting me based on a bias or based on a perception they had of who I am because I am a woman. I doubt that that person would ever order a modesty panel for a man in this position. But, of course, without him confirming his intention, it's just speculation at this point. But in terms of when I ran the campaign and how I am now and how I'm being treated, in terms of people I work for, I don't feel like I'm being treated any differently. I don't feel like the level of respect or authority increased when I took over the role. I think the role was just a bonus. And it's definitely different from Susan because I'm not in a position where I can set policies that affect the community. I'm just here to enforce the policies that already exist.
So one element of this is the workplace dynamics, and maybe if it's not interacting with the community or with other candidates, there was a study where they were analyzing these stereotypes, where they talk about comparing women in the political arena to women in the professional workplace in terms of their traits. And what it found, basically, what the researchers decided was that because there's this overlap of successful traits between what it takes to be a successful professional, that there is actually what they call a subtype. So it's a new stereotypical category with its very own qualities, separate from the broader category of women in general. And so this was a more clear way of trying to evaluate political participants, basically. And I think because so many of the studies that were done before that were just like, okay, you've got like Susan said, family development programs or child care or things that would sort of stereotypically be like, oh, I think women might be better at that. But Susan takes it to the next level because of her professional qualifications and the fact that her knowledge of those policies transcends just how people might ordinarily or stereotypically accept. So I thought that was a pretty interesting point, that female politicians in general, they lose the benefit of this is what the conclusion was. They lose the benefit of being assumed to be better at some of those social policies because the qualities that it takes for them to be successful would instead be more like higher level of qualifications, more assertiveness in the political arena. And so anyway, the reason I would go through all that is because my expectation is that for Karen, in your situation, you it sounds like what you're saying is like you're a professional with your skill set and you lead by example, and it's been a non-issue for the most part. You have not observed in the workplace that there's been that sort of derogatory impact of people's stereotypes. Does that sound right?
Yeah, at least not to my face.
Yeah, which is great. Which is great. But like I said, it is that tightrope. There is that tightrope aspect of it that people have pointed out. And so just to take it to the next level, people entering the political arena was, and I don't want to jump the gun. We do have a lot of data about what a lot of like qualifications and categories it would take for people to think about why they would get into politics or why they would not get into politics. But before we dive into all that, I just want to ask you, I guess we could start again with Susan. What were the considerations that you had to think about or evolve your opinion about before entering the political arena to say like, hey, I think I'm going to throw my hat into the ring to become the next mayor of Eureka. These are some of the things that are important to me. What are some of the things that you had to think about and evaluate if it was something that you wanted to do?
I had to think. And I had to think a lot about my family and how they were going to respond. I ran mostly because I was very much encouraged by my kid, but at the same time, I had to be very careful that everybody was okay, that people were going to say things about me that they didn't want to hear. So,
you mean the kids didn't want to hear?
Yeah. So it was like, okay, I'll run, but when I run, if people say bad things about me, you have to, you're going to have to suck it up and just listen. You can't defend me. And that was a big consideration, I think.
Yeah. So I'm trying to like dig up the little study results here, but like basically people are. So this one study that was done, I know I keep referring to them sort of more generally and broadly. But this one was it's called "Why Are Women Still Not Running for Public Office?" and it was done a while back. So things have changed since then. But the organization was it was called the Citizen Political Ambition Panel Study, and it's a longitudinal study with 4,000 professional men and women. And so they took a target audience of folks who would potentially be involved in the political arena. And what they did was they started asking them, well, what was the negative that kept you out? What's keeping you out? And so one question was like, is it soliciting campaign contributions? And men and women were very close to the same. And another one was dealing with party officials. Men and women were very close to the same. Going door to door to meet constituents, again, similar. Dealing with members of the press, similar. But then there's a big difference here in potentially having to engage in negative campaigning. That was a really big one. And then the personal side was potentially hindering professional goals. That was the same between men and women. spending less time with your family. That was the same between men and women. But then another big one was loss of privacy. So between the negative campaigning and the privacy, those were the big outliers in this study. And they like I said, they did it over time. They studied it over time, and they found that those things really stayed fairly constant. And so I want to ask you, Karen, were there any of those attributes that I mentioned that affected your consideration when you were trying to decide if you were going to run for office?
Out of all of them, or just the ones you said had different results?
Yeah, no, I was just throwing it out there, and I was curious about your experience when you were running.
Well, the negative campaigning did exist during my campaign. It didn't really turn me off. I just considered it a distraction. And that's that confidence talking again. In some cases, people might consider it arrogant. But for me, I know I'm the best person for the job. I know what to do to fix it. Just give it to me kind of thing. And it's that attitude that helped me get through the negative campaigning and see it as distracting. The privacy part, that's where I struggle, because I'm part of a generation that has, Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, and we're just used to posting all of our thoughts because that's how we communicate with each other. But in my position, where a lot of people are older than me, where a lot of my colleagues in their auditor controller positions across the county are a lot older than me, they don't understand that part. So they think that their privacy was lost as soon as they got sworn in. And I don't really feel that that's the case. I feel like the person who I was before the campaign is the person who I was during the campaign, is the person who I continue to be. And posting on Facebook has been present that whole time. So I don't have any reservations about posting my feelings, posting my thoughts, posting my pictures. And I think it has more to do with just being raised that way. It's not so different for me. But I can definitely see how women of 2 generations older than me did not grow up with that kind of public outreach, and they would fear losing their anonymity.
So I think you raised
Maybe
a really
it's
important
more
point.
Generational.
Sorry, say that again?
I think it might be a little bit more generational.
Yeah, so there is an element of that, I'm sure of it, but just more broadly, like I just want to sort of put an underline and an exclamation point that you mentioned. This is because how I was raised, and this is my confidence, and we'll get into it maybe a little bit later on. But in a way, Jasmine and I, we talked about how that seems to be one of the roadblocks, the impediments to women participating in the political arena. In part, like I said, the data shows it here, but it really is also anecdotally speaking, it's a reservation. It's a thing that people are considering when they want to go into the arena, to say to themselves, maybe some of these sets of doubts that I have are shared by other people. Maybe it's a broader. We all are worried about. I mean, certainly, younger people who are internet savvy, but I think also, most people are worried these days about risks to their privacy, or the impact of bad campaigning, or people targeting their family. Yeah. So I was just going to ask. I mean, maybe not with your own campaigns, but just in our local community. Do you guys maybe? Do you have a? I'll start with you again, Susan. Are you aware of examples where like colleagues of yours or peers of yours have expressed to you like, these are serious concerns to me? And is it women or men or both, or just some people? Are you aware of people facing these types of reservations about participation?
Well, during the campaign, there was some. I felt like our campaign, I was lucky that it didn't get very negative, but some of the others did. And there ended up being a press conference about, encouraging people to run campaigns that didn't have the negative name calling. And really, I do think that it's important because it prevents people, smart people, from running. And I've talked to many, many people who say, I would never do that, because people will just say whatever they want, whether it's right, whether it's wrong. It's not about what you're posting online. It's about what other people are posting online, and your ability to sort of control that, which you just don't have a lot. And And so I have talked to people, men and women. It's certainly not specific to women. People don't like that vulnerability.
What about you, Karen? Do you have any observations about other people, peers of yours, or people that you know that are in the political arena that have reservations similar to the ones we described?
Yeah, a lot of people would say to me, "Oh, I can't believe you're running. I would never do it. I couldn't do what you're doing." And it is that fear of we are in such a small community. We're all somehow related to each other, or we know somebody who knows somebody, and the job prospects are not, superfluous in this county. So I totally understand where the motivation is more self-preservation and the threat of something negative being put in the news about you and that just being in Google forever. That can definitely be a deterrent for someone who's thinking long-term about, aspirations to run for some big office. They have to be very careful about what they're doing now. And I appreciate that Susan brought up the point that it's not what we post, it's what other people post.
Right.
I forgot about that part. There's
we
a lot
get
of
pretty
people
desensitized.
They're very courageous at home behind a monitor with a keyboard. They would never say that to you in person. I know people who went online and said a lot of terrible things about me, and then I met them and I said, "Hey, how's it going? I'm Karen. Good to meet you." And all they could do is, "Oh, hi, how are you? Great to see you." So then they're just remembering that what people post online it's one thing. It doesn't mean that they're going to come up to you in the street and hit you or something. But that's also, I'm not as conflict averse as other people might be. And one of the stereotypes about being a woman is that you're not confrontational and you want to be kind and peaceful and happy thoughts and stuff like that. And I don't fit that mold. So I do get people who are surprised when they meet me and they ask me for an exception to a rule, and I say no. And they just don't know how to function. But no, the answer is no. The policy says no. The board says no. The public doesn't want it. No, the answer is no. And they still want to negotiate because they think that they can. And I always wonder, would you do that if I was not a woman? Would you do that if I was a man in this position? Because I've had a lot of male supervisors, and I watch how other people interact with them. I watch myself when I interacted with them. And when they would say no, the answer was no. And so I don't know. That's the difference I'm experiencing. And I think it is because I'm not as conflict averse. And that same attitude is what made me look past the fear of what other people might say about me. But that's just very specific to me. So I hear you, with the studies, and I don't know. There's so many factors to consider in one person that I don't know we can all be lumped together.
I was thinking the same thing. I mean, you and I have such different experiences in the same town.
Do you want to hash that idea out a little bit?
Well, we're just different people. So, I think that's what we say all the time about any time you lump a bunch of people together is that we all have different ways we're all individual people. And even among women, we could have very different, ways of approaching things. However, I do think that people do tend to have expectations. And then if you don't meet those expectations, they get confused at best.
So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head to where I was hoping to go next, which is just to sort of quote Martin Luther King, that we want to judge people by their character, not the color of their skin. And it's the same thing. We want to judge people by their character, not their gender. And I really think that this presidential election season, we have these 20 plus candidates. Many of the top candidates are women, and I think it's a good like snapshot of us to explore this idea. I was really thankful and helpful. I find it a helpful exercise to look at where we stand now. Like you guys represent incredibly admirable role models at the local level, but I think some of the lessons that you guys just explained that you've experienced, it's showing the positivity of participation, showing up, acting with integrity, and and professionalism and just doing the job and letting that speak for itself and not letting the group category be the place where stereotypes can seep into job performance or job success or perceptions. So I'm gonna play a song here real quick, Change of Ideas, and we'll be right back.
Well, the sheaves have all been brought, where the fields are washed away, and the palaces now stand where the government's all laid, and the times to see ahead with the slaves of rosy hues, for we don't wish to admit what it is we have to lose. Millennia incoming, the modern age is here. It sanctifies the future, yet renders us with fear. So many theories, so many prophecies. What we do need is a change of ideas. When we are scared, we can hide in our reveries. But what we need is a change of ideas. Change of ideas, change of ideas. What we need now is a change of ideas.
You are listening to You Are Here on KMUD, and I'm your host, Dave Frank. Today I'm in the studio with Jasmine Manuel, and we are speaking with Susan Seaman, Mayor of Eureka, and Karen Dominguez, Auditor-Controller of Humboldt County, about their experiences in the local political arena and the prospects for electing a woman president in the upcoming presidential election. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so where we left off was, trying to pivot a little bit to looking at the particulars of the folks that are running for office. And I don't know if you guys got the opportunity to watch any of the debates. There were two a few weeks back and two more last couple of nights. So this is a horse race. There's a lot of electioneering and competitiveness, and there's that sport aspect of it where the media goes into a frenzy about the rankings and the polling and the mechanics of it. But I'm trying to kind of shift to look at a little bit through this prism of that whole storyline, that article that I said, women candidates in the is America ready for? They say they'd vote for a woman, but ... And so I want to like defuse this "but" thing for a little bit. And so, yes, Joe Biden is the safe candidate who's sort of leading the polling right now. For the most part, he looks like that's the appointed person of the Democratic National Party. It seems like that's where they might be heading. But if you look, like I said, if you look at the polling, well, maybe it's the case that because less than 2/3 of the people in the country say they want to vote for somebody over 70, that might be an exclusionary influence on Joe Biden. And if you extrapolate it out a little bit, our community is a very progressive community. It's I would think Bernie Sanders got close to 70% support in the last primary election cycle. So we tend, I think people here that we talk to tend to support, or at least lean towards supporting in their heart, Bernie Sanders. And then maybe there's a little bit of a pivot mentally towards Elizabeth Warren, and making her extremely viable both nationally and locally. And so I want to say there's about 6 or so people, last I looked, who are actually going to qualify for the next round of debates. They're making it much harder for people. They've got to score really high in the polling, in at least 6 major national polls, and they have to have a certain footprint of supporters, the number of supporters, 130,000 people around the country, and they have to have exhibit support in some large number of states. I think it's like 20 states or something. So they're making it really hard for these single-digit people to participate in the next debate. So before we dismiss all those folks who are like less than 10% approval rating, I just want to mention the broader candidacy of the set of incredibly qualified women that are running for president right now. And at the top of we'll call it the leaderboard, there's Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris, but also Kirsten Gillibrand and oh my goodness, Nancy Klobuchar. They also have an input that is valuable, that people are really benefiting from hearing what their ideas are. And so I'll start at the bottom. I'll start at the people who, sorry to say the bottom, but the lower popularity candidates. things that, like, I'm just going to talk about Kirsten Gillibrand for a minute. She's holding her own. She's doing really well. So she actually is proposing things like if we had a robust childcare system, for people to help single parent families, and if we had campaign finance reform to make it so that there wasn't so much money in the system. Like these are tangible, really good ideas that she's putting forward, but she's not getting a lot of traction. Her style maybe is a little bit softer, I guess. I hate to say it like that, but she's not as confrontational, and she's sort of not as animated with some of those stereotypes like we talked about. She doesn't seem to fit that mold. Versus, say, let's now look at Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris, where they seem to be like quite the opposite. They're engaging, and they're basically banging their fist on the table with their presentation and their delivery mechanisms. So I want to open up the phone lines, 707-923-3911, 707-923-3911. If people have input, if people have questions for our guests about the local experiences that they said, or the experiences of participating in the political arena as a woman in our community, or if they would like to pose questions about women candidates for president to any of us here or to our guests, feel free to call in. But in the meantime, I just want to like pivot towards one more element of what possibly makes it more difficult for women to enter the political arena. And so one of those studies I referenced before, when those professionals were asked about childcare responsibilities in their home, like 60% of the women and 4% of the men say, I take care, I'm the primary caregiver. And when they were asked, is your spouse or partner the primary caregiver, 5% of the women and 60% of the men said that their spouse was the primary caregiver, with only about 30% or so, 29 and 35, saying, no, we have an equal split. So about a third of the country is equal split, and about 2/3 is not. So the reason I mention that is because some of the possible policies that have been proposed are things that would make it a little bit easier to supposedly make it a little bit easier for those folks to enter the political arena. And I want to ask you again. Sorry to keep going. Maybe I'll switch it around this time. I'll ask Karen first. Is childcare responsibility? Do you see that as an issue or barrier for women when they potentially are going to enter the political arena, or whether it's your own experience or people that you've known?
Yes, absolutely. Access to child care can be, or not having access to child care can definitely be a deterrent, because campaigning isn't from 9 to 5. Campaigning goes late into the night, starts early in the morning, wakes you up all hours of the night, and you definitely need to be available to go to meetings, go to town halls, go to party committee meetings. You need to be accessible while you're campaigning. You need to be able to drop what you're doing and go to a fundraiser. And that kind of flexibility you don't have when you're dependent upon the child care center that closes promptly at 5:30, or the relative that you usually depend on is sick. So yes, child care is definitely one of the items that would, if you don't have access to it, can deter someone from running for office who would be a great candidate. And
so my question then is, when in your experience, is that what you ended up doing? You ended up relying on your social network, your family and friends to kind of help bridge that gap?
Yes. So some community meetings, I brought my kids with me. I have 4 kids. So, yeah, I'll give you a chance to soak that in. And
I give you a lot of credit. It's a very admirable accomplishment.
I didn't do it alone. My husband was involved. And my 2 older daughters, they're very impressionable. They watch what I'm doing. They want to know how my day was. And taking them with me during the campaign events wasn't so much, look how cool your mom is, or look how cool these people are. It was more, this is what it looks like to run for office. Whether I win or lose, this is about representation. And now you are watching your mom, a woman, go through it with kids. When I couldn't take them to events that are a little late night and everyone else is maybe drinking or celebrating in some manner, then I did have to rely on My husband, bless his heart, please stop everything you're doing and put your life on pause so that I can run for office real quick. Or putting on Facebook one day, can anyone help me watch all my kids while I go to the city hall meeting? And I did get a lot of assistance from my husband, from friends on Facebook, a woman who worked at the child care who said, I'll help you after hours. If I didn't have that support, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. I would have just relied on Facebook and hoped people saw it.
Well, thankfully, the safety net, the system of supports were there. What about you, Susan? Do you have any similar experiences with childcare being a potential problem or impediment to active participation in the political process?
So I'm thinking a lot about it as I'm working on the Children's Initiative. I want to make so Karen was running for a job, which is great, because when she gets it, she actually she gets a paycheck with her job. She's very lucky. There are many people who, once they hit their second child and have to pay for daycare, it's cheaper for them to not work. So that's an issue just about people working. Couples have to decide which one's going to stay at home because it costs us more to actually work if you're not making enough to cover the cost of child care. City council, in all of our local city councils, you get a very small stipend, but you're required to, if you have to pay bills, you have to keep your job. So when you win, you get to keep your full-time job, plus you add on all of the responsibilities of city council. So you're doing basically two jobs, and it's very difficult if you have children. And we do have a couple of folks on the council who have it, which is really fortunate, because when you don't have people who have kids helping to make the decisions, you don't think about kids when you're making the decisions. And I've been talking a lot to Connie Stewart, who was on City of Arcata Council, and they just inadvertently made a zoning law that they passed that eliminated all neighborhood child care, because they were trying to deal with some other issue, and nobody brought to mind, you've got daycares in those neighborhoods. And so for a couple of months, those daycares were illegal. And she's like, oh, gosh, nobody even brought it up. So it's so important to be able to have folks in those circumstances engaged so that they can bring up those issues.
Oh, most definitely. And I think that's sort of there's a, I don't know what you call it, but like just a generic sort of understanding about the political process, that the more voices that are at the table, the more ideas get considered. And it's a way to broaden the reach of advancement and participation for everybody. Like it's a self-priming pump. It's a virtuous cycle. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Getting more people at the table and more people to be included. It's a virtuous cycle. So one of the things
we talk about a lot here is just how do we have access to, even if you're not going to run for office, is how are you as a parent able to easily engage with government? So we've talked a lot about child care in council meetings, but I think that's a non-parent kind of answer, because it's not just about having child care. That's dinner time, that's homework time. You still have stuff to do about the time council meetings are happening. So what other ways can we make sure we're going out and getting the opinions of parents and families so that those voices are getting to us? If we don't have them or reflect them, we're at least listening to them.
Oh, that's a great point, definitely.
I think that's a great point as well, Susan. Not that long ago, I saw that you guys were having a meeting and you offered childcare.
We are at all of our community meetings. We're offering childcare, and I saw today, I just double-checked, we're doing a zero waste meeting, which will be a community meeting. We'll have pizza, and we always encourage families, and we have childcare. Yeah,
which is getting more people's voices heard and more active in the processes.
Which is fantastic. It adds an element of I think I heard or saw rather it referred to as democratic legitimacy. Because people it takes the decision making and instead of it being considered like they or them, it makes it we and us. So you feel like, okay, well, I'm there, I'm in the room, I have a voice, and people are listening to me, and this is great. and which kind of segues to the question that I saw, which was, so are women losing elections because of sexism? Is it a thing? Is there a problem with that? Are these stereotypes real strong? And what they found was that at the ballot box, women do well, in spite of any of these stereotypes or any of these obstacles. Congressional races, many studies have shown that women win at about the same rate as men. So when the self-selection barriers or the family care barriers, when those are removed or mitigated, it's an equal playing field success for women across many different offices, across many different states at the national level. So it's a great goal, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think we have a caller on air. Go ahead, caller.
Hello. I just had a question for the guests. Someone mentioned internet comments, and it had me thinking about the internet and like Gamergate, where a lot of harassment of women happened, and sometimes it can be really dangerous for women to speak up, or especially on the internet. I'm wondering if any of the guests felt that in their own politics, and that their safety may be compromised more simply because they're female, or I imagine that's probably something that is much worse on the internet.
Do you want to go ahead first, Karen or Susan? Either of you guys have a answer?
I do. Revenge porn is a real thing, and that's when former lover decides to post your naked pictures online because you don't do what they want or because they're angry. When I was running the campaign, I kept getting a lot of notices that someone was trying to access my Gmail account. You set it up for security, so it tells me someone in Sacramento is trying to log on as you. Who do I know in Sacramento? Well, what does Sacramento have to do with Humboldt County? And then later getting an email that from my Capital One account saying that they monitored my credit and they found my Gmail account being sold on the dark web. I have no idea who wants my Gmail or why. It's not like I have anything cool in there. But that is a very real threat to women specifically, because it happens so often, and for a long time it went unpunished. Now I know there's laws passed that there are penalties for anyone who participates in revenge porn. I don't know what another word for it is, so I'm sorry if that's inappropriate for the radio. I don't know these days.
No, I mean, I've seen it in the paper. I'm sure it's fine to say as long as it's not on the banned list. Yeah.
I never know anymore. But yes, that is a very real threat to women. But I'm sure men might face it too. Now, when you can be on social media, what are they? Singles apps, like
Dating
Tinder
sites,
and
dating
stuff. apps. Whatever you put on there's nothing to stop another person who you don't even know from screenshotting it and putting it out for everyone else to see, when your intention is just to keep it in that little app. And that might, that's a good point to bring up, because outside of the money barriers, outside of the child care barriers, outside of being really sensitive to conflict, there is that real threat that someone's going to put your private information online, share it with people, sell it, or try to extort money from you, or try to blackmail you into doing something.
Yeah, real risks.
Yeah, I think that's probably, maybe it's not equal, but men definitely have that risk as well. I think the one nice thing about everything being so open and exposed in politics is that, because everything is public, I think it might be easier than Gamergate. It's interesting how that is kind of an insidious group of people that go into these small groups that are sort of private, where they can really, I think, harass somebody without a larger population watching that happen. Because I think there is some truth that you get power and support from others when somebody starts attacking you, except for the stuff Karen was just talking about, the really insidious, like digging into your personal things. That's beyond the pale. But just your basic sort of harassment I don't know if it's different for men or women, but I think it's definitely, there's a much brighter light on it than there is in the Gamergate industry.
No, that definitely makes sense. So I'm curious about it seems to me that just again kind of referring back to what we were talking about, that so much of the concern of whether or not a person as a woman is going to enter the political arena, the things that they're considering, can be addressed. It can be mitigated. Like there can be proactive steps taken by folks. So, for example, what can be done at the practical level is recruiting early and recruiting often. Organizations and individuals dedicated to closing the gender gap might develop and advocate for childcare and elder assistance programs and policies. Spreading the word about women's electoral successes and fundraising prowess can work to change people's perceptions. Those seeking to recruit and encourage women candidates must work to dispel women's anxiety and negative views about the mechanics of a campaign. So those were the recommendations of the panel. So that includes ultimately things like providing support and training and what amounts to an attempt to bridge the gap between people's fears or suspicions about the process, and then bringing them on board and making them feel comfortable. Do you? I'll start with Karen again. Are you aware, like in your experience from running, were there supports available to you, or have you now been exposed to other supports to help encourage people to enter the political arena?
Well, when I decided to run, all I knew was that I was really good at accounting and auditing. Then with that comes paperwork. So I go to the elections office and I ask, what do I need to do to run? They say, you need to read this whole manual from the, Fair Political Practices Committee. I can do that. I can read a manual full of rules. That's literally what my job is. But then initially I had nobody to talk to me about statements that you make and what political capital means and endorsements and groups. Where I found a lot of assistance is locally with the North Coast People's Alliance. They had a seminar or conference or presentation called Run, Serve, Lead, where it was nonpartisan, so it wasn't about Republicans or Democrats or who you're voting for president. It was about, this is what it means to run. These are the forms you have to fill out. This is how you report your finances. This is where you go and fill out your paperwork, and so you pay here and you send it here. It was a very mechanical and logistic help that I can totally see a lot of people being so overwhelmed by if you're not already used to it. And in their assistance with that logistical paperwork, I got to meet the people, and the people were the ones who also talked to me about the way you deliver a message and how there are many different ways to say yes. There are many different ways to say no, and depending upon what your ultimate goal is, you need to frame your communications that way. So when it was about campaigning, all I had were complaints, right? This is not right, this is not right, this is what we're going to fix, this is what I just can't stand that it's such a mess. And someone pulled me aside and said, if all you're going to do is complain, then there's nothing special about you, because take a number. And that was assistance I couldn't get in a book. I couldn't Google to get that information. It was somebody being real with me and telling me what makes you different. You have to convince people that beyond the complaining, you can fix it, and then tell them how. And that was here locally. I didn't have to pay anybody to give me that advice. It was just, specifically, it was this group, North Coast People's Alliance, in that training, and it was just talking to the people who regularly participate in civic engagement and through that kind of training together.
Well, that's really insightful, and I'm glad that such an organization like that exists. I know we're getting really close to the top of the hour here. Susan, do you have any supplementary ideas on that, or finishing thoughts about mechanisms for support and training in the political arena?
No, I think that Karen hit the nail on the head, that I also got help through organizations like that. And I hired a great campaign manager who also didn't have any experience, but she was great at doing the research on who could find us the information.
So I want to just ask my colleague here, Jasmine, but as we wrap up, I know that you and I have talked a little bit about the idea of political candidacy and obstacles to that, but you have been exposed to an organization that is known to provide training and support. Do you want to say a little bit about that before we wrap up?
Yes, thank you, David. So there's a group called Emerge California, and what they do is they provide training and resources to specifically women to get us into politics at any level. And so it could talk. Part of it's like fundraising. Other aspects is public speaking. So I've been working with them and obtaining more information. And I think they're a good resource, especially here.
Yeah, so I know that this hour flew by in a hurry. I look forward to speaking with all you guys again. Jasmine, I'll make sure that I have you back here sometime so we can talk more about that. Sorry that it got, the clock kind of is running us out of here.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Final
women
thoughts.
should run. Sophia Pereira is local, and she's I think she might be one of the founders of that movement or involved in getting the founding of it going. So Sophia Pereira and She Should Run is another great reference.
It's called She Should Run?
Mm-hmm.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much for these ideas. And like I said, thank you guys both for being here. I do hope to speak with you again real soon, Karen and Susan and Jasmine. So unfortunately, we've reached that time where I have to end things here. So I feel bad because I know there's so much more here that we would love to talk about. But based on some of these great ideas here that we've heard and some of these insights and optimism for the future, we can channel our own collective experience and wisdom, articulate a vision, build a consensus, and organize to create a path towards a better future. Today we were speaking with Susan Seaman, Mayor of Eureka, Karen Dominguez, Auditor Controller of Humboldt County, Jasmine Manuel, Human Resources Professional, and member of the Eureka City Personnel Board, about their experiences in local political arena and prospects for electing a woman president in the upcoming presidential election. Hopefully we've shed some light on perceptions about women in politics and perceptions from women who have successfully navigated the political process. A big thank you to Nate Dogg for engineering this show. Thank you everyone out there for listening. It's time for new ideas. Fight the good fight. You are the government. Until next time, this is your host Dave Frank, and you are here.
Have you lost your sense of